Progressives. I apologize, we're running a little late, my fault. So tonight I'm excited because I am being joined by Sanjay Patel. He is running in Florida, District 8, for US Representative. He is a Bernie delegate turned Bernie crat. And you guys know how I feel about Bernie delegates. So thank you so much for joining us, Sanjay. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely. So, I'd be remiss if I interviewed a delegate and we didn't talk about that week in Philly. I was on the outside protesting and the delegates were on the inside, basically having to tolerate things on a whole different level. You were known for your bedazzled jacket, which was amazing.
Thank you.
It was in articles and everything. So can you kind of touch on, what that week was like for you?
It was incredible just to be in that atmosphere where, we were deciding, it felt like the fate of the direction of the country. And so to sit in there and kind of go through the proceedings, it was, when I think back at that time, there were some really high and low moments for me. And I know when I get back together with, a few of the Bernie delegates that I sat with, not just from my state in Florida, but from all the other states, I've made a ton of good friendships. And a lot of us took that experience and, the lows that had happened, we were able to say, you know what, we're not done here. We would have loved to have had Bernie as the nominee, but it was the kind of thing where it said, look, you've been energized, you got engaged into this process. And prior to that, I hadn't been involved politically. I had been complacent, like I think a lot of folks have been. And so after that experience, I said, look, it's my duty, it's our duty to get involved so that we can shape the direction of the country, in the way that we want it to be. And so that's how I find myself 2 years later running for Congress, and it's carrying that torch. And I couldn't do it without the support of so many fellow delegates that I met through that period in my life. So, unforgettable memories for sure. And it's carrying me today as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that was definitely one of the hardest weeks of many of our lives. But on the outside, like, I don't think I could have got through that week without being with my Bernie family, just being with, so many people I knew online for a year and never got to meet. And it was just like a total love fest, like the whole week. It was amazing. Well, first I want to say your website is so well done.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. I actually built it really myself.
Really? It's so good. Like, I've interviewed about 90 something candidates, so I see a lot, and yours is just very cohesive, and each thing has a synopsis at the end of it. It's just done very well. So it was very easy for me to do research on you, which I like. But one of the things I really enjoyed was hearing about how you came to how your family came to America, and you're a first generation immigrant, and things like that. So can you just kind of wow, that's really okay. Yeah. Somebody get rid of this Steven dude. Yeah. But anyway, Bernie hater, there's always at least one, because they have millions of followers and stuff too, so they can hate. But anyway, so do you want to share your story of coming here, and the success your parents made is just incredible.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm a first generation immigrant. So I got to this country, my family came here when I was less than a year old. And so when they got here, they didn't know the language, they didn't have family here, they didn't have any money. And so it was their story. They started off doing minimum wage jobs. I remember my mom, she was working at a McDonald's. She's a vegetarian, right? And so they did whatever they needed to raise 4 kids in a rough part of Los Angeles. That's where I grew up. And so back then, though, that's the difference between what we're seeing today and back then. So hard work was met with opportunity. So they saved up whatever they could. I can remember my mom, she would coupon as well. And eventually my parents, our family got our pathway to citizenship from Ronald Reagan. So you can see how far the Republican Party has come from back then to what it is today as well. And so my parents eventually started their own small business. We all got to go to college. We all got great educations. And so when I look back at that period of time, for my folks to have the courage to come to this country, in search of a better future for our family, which is what a lot of these immigrants coming to this country are looking for. In many ways, my story is the American dream. And for me, I feel compelled to, look, I've been successful. I got to go to school. I started my own small business. I've built a successful career. And for me, I feel, especially in my district here, where so many folks are struggling, I feel compelled to make sure that that American dream, that opportunity is available for everyone in my district as well and across the country.
Absolutely. So you also, coming from that history, you are also a small business owner and starter of a nonprofit as well, which is pretty amazing. Can you talk about both your business and your nonprofit?
Sure. So my small business was a small consulting firm. And so we were doing project management consulting, that kind of work. And so essentially the best way I describe it was, if a company is experiencing some kind of a business problem or something that needs fixing, they would call me in to do the fixing. So I can't think of a better way or a better opportunity than Congress, right? That's a place where it needs a lot of fixing. So I feel that my skill set would be appropriate there. And then in the nonprofit, I had a nonprofit where I had taken a 2-month backpacking trek through Africa. And I spent a month of it in Tanzania, volunteering at a local school there, where I met a woman who sold chickens in her backyard, took that income to start a school in her backyard. And so when I met her, the kids were getting a great education, and she just needed some additional capital to expand her efforts. And so we worked with her, my wife and I, and when we got back to the States, we said, you know what, let's focus on seeing what we can do to help her out, because her story was incredible. The fact that she's taking her money to invest in her community, she was doing great things there. And so we started a nonprofit, and we've raised over, as of today, probably over close to $500,000 to invest in some schools in Tanzania. We did some work in Afghanistan and Nepal. And so right now in Tanzania, in Arusha, in a little village there's a primary, a secondary, and a nursery school with nearly 1,000 kids getting a great education. And so, that was what we did.
Wow, that's so incredible. Those Nepal and Africa, those are like my 2 dream places.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, that is rad. So I love the fact that you are empathetic to people other than, the ones you live around. You don't wait until something affects you until you start to care. So I think that's a very good, trait with a candidate. I want someone who actually cares about people. So what other kind of activism do you do?
Sure. So around 2016, when Bernie entered the race, I did not know much about him. And so my wife had a little house party with some fellow folks. And that's where I first learned about what he was doing. And that really got me my first taste of, this is what we've got to do. We've got to get involved in the community. So I was doing my work with my nonprofit, but locally here or domestically, I saw, there's a lot of things that need attention and fixing here. So I wanted to see what I could do. So some of the roles I did or some of the activism I got involved with was, in 2016, around the same time, what was happening at Standing Rock. I went there 3 times to help our brothers and sisters over there, the water protectors there, because I felt like they were on the front lines of what could happen to any one of our communities. Here you've got an Indian reservation where, a big corporation wanted to put the oil pipeline through their backyard because they didn't want to put it into the suburban backyards where it's predominantly, Caucasian. And they just thought they'd just put it right through their supply. It didn't matter. And this could happen to any one of us. So it's moneyed interests against common people. And so I learned a lot. I learned a lot from our Native brothers and sisters there, because it was about, standing together. It wasn't a violent, it was, look, we're protecting our water. This is the basis for our livelihoods. I mean, there was a common saying there, Mini Wukoni, which is water is life. And that's absolutely true. And without water, it doesn't matter what party you are. It doesn't matter what socioeconomic status you have. Without clean water, clean air, and clean land, you have nothing. And so it really taught me a lot about, this is important. When you boil it down to the basics, we've really got to make a stand for these things that are really important to us. And so I learned quite a bit from them. And then I got involved here locally. So after Bernie didn't get the nomination, I said, look, we've got to, get involved with the party. So we, a number of Bernie folks, Bernie supporters, we got involved and joined our local Democratic Party to see what we could do to turn it around. And what we were able to do was we brought about 60 of our folks to become precinct committee men and women. And that was enough to actually take leadership positions. So my wife became the chair, I became the state committee man, and we filled off the rest of the leadership positions. And last year was our first true test to see what we could do. So, end of 2016, we got elected to these positions. 2017 comes around and we got involved in 3 races. And so we went from, they had about 30 precinct committee men and women. We're at about over 200 today. And then in last year, we participated in 3 off-year municipal elections. We won 3 seats in, this is a heavy red Republican area. In one of those seats we won, we're outnumbered by Republicans by 80%. And then one of the seats we won in Rockledge, we helped elect the first African-American woman to the Rockledge City Council in its history. And so these are things where, it was, the way we were able to be effective was we talked to voters, we knocked on doors. We actually knocked more doors than any other county in the state of Florida last year, the 5 weeks leading up to that election. We knocked on over 16,000 doors in a 5-week period. Wow. And that's what we found, and we're trying to carry on that work. At the end of the day, we're so we're so divided and polarized. And we find that if we talk about these issues that really impact all of us, regardless of party, that's where we make progress. So we can talk about the environment, education, healthcare, the economy, because all of us, we share the same educational system and the same medical system. So it's about how do we best help people? And I'm finding a lot of resonance across the board.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of my candidates who come on, and several have been in Florida, talk about, shenanigans and pushback they've gotten from their local Democratic parties. And actually, I hear that like all over the country, unfortunately. Have you dealt with any kind of, pushback from, anyone in the party or anything like that?
So locally, we essentially took it over. And so we're one of the most, I'd say, progressive county parties here in the state. So we obviously do have challenges because at the state level, I don't know that they're as progressive as what we're trying to do here. So there's some elements of, it's a mix of bureaucracy. I think that, my wife actually ran, she wanted to be the chair of the Florida Democratic Party last year. So she ran for that position. And I think there's an element of we're still having issues around, what do we need to do to make sure that these issues, these values that we're fighting for as a Democratic Party, that we can actually get this out to the majority of the folks here in our state. And so we're not going to agree on everything, which is fine, but it's about how do we push. So for example, I know that they wanted to push a resolution of the state party about not taking any money from the for-profit prison industry. And so what for me should seem like a no-brainer issue, that wasn't as easy to pass as you would hope it to be. And so it's a matter of, look, at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that these values that we're pushing for, I think these progressive values really resonate with the majority of folks. And it's about, making sure that we do the work and push those values. And I think over time, we'll get there. But, this is the challenge, because not everyone is on board. even in my race, I'm not taking any corporate PAC money. And I saw today that the DNC is considering taking fossil fuel money again. They had passed a resolution and now they want to revert that. So things of that nature, for me at the end of the day, we should, as a party, we have got to, not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. If we're going to be the party for the working class, for the environment, we've got to make sure that our actions reflect that. And so these are some of the obstacles that we're facing and that we'll eventually overcome.
Yeah, it's incredible because so many candidates and people and everything end up focusing on Trump, when in actuality, we need to focus on the party that is supposedly representing us, and we need to basically hold them accountable. So it's really important. A lot of people don't understand the direct correlation between corporate money and how much that affects everything we're fighting for. So is anyone else you're running against taking corporate money?
So I don't have a primary opponent, and I'm going head to head with the 5-term Republican incumbent here in this district. And so he's been in there for 10 years. And again, this is a person, he was one of the 11 Freedom Caucus members who wanted to fire Rosenstein recently. He's a climate change denier. I can run the gamut, but again, it comes back to, these are the values, folks here in our district especially, and across the country, we're desperate for Medicare for all. We need folks are struggling. We have nearly over 91,000 people in our district don't have medical care, medical insurance. And then if you look at the economy, we've got in Florida, we're ranked 3rd in terms of the number of folks who use more than half of their income to pay for rent. So in my district, it's between 34% in one of the counties, Brevard County, and nearly 40% in Indian River County struggle to afford basic daily needs like transportation, childcare, education. And so, at the end of the day, this is what we've got to push for. We've got to say, look, these are the issues impacting working class folk in our district, and let's make sure that the policies that we represent them and not corporate special interests. So for me, it's really important to say, look, I'm not beholden to anyone. No one's going to say, hey, I just got a campaign contribution from X corporation and I'm going to be beholden to that. At the end of the day, I want to represent the citizens, the constituents of my district. They are the folks that I'm going there to fight for. And so I think that eliminating big money, corporate money out of the equation will help the country a long way. So I'd love to see public financing of elections as well. We've got to get big money out of politics.
Absolutely. Do you also hope to start seeing open primaries, paper ballots? What other changes would you like to see?
I would love to see universal registration. I would love to see open primaries. I think the fact that, Florida is a closed primary state. So right now we've got a governor's race where we've got 7 Democratic candidates running for governor. We've got a number of Republican governors. NPAs, which make up a huge portion of my district, they don't have a say in any of that, which is unbelievable. Another change that I'm hoping gets passed, it's going to be an amendment on our ballot this year, is the restoration of rights for felons. So in Florida, we're one of the states where, if you've got a felony, you don't get your voting rights restored automatically. You've got to go to a panel. And this is for, nonviolent felonies. And so we've got so many folks who just don't, this is in this country, it's one of those rights that is a cherished right, the ability to have a vote. And for us to be one of these states, I'm hoping that we pass this in November. There's just a lot of, and I'd love to see the end of gerrymandering. I want to see some independent redistricting commissions to really tackle that. And both sides are guilty of that. And let's create some fair districts to make sure that when you do vote, you've got a fair shot at actually electing folks who truly represent the district that they're running for.
Right, absolutely. I had Chardo Richardson on Wednesday. He said to say hi.
Tell him I say hello back. Maybe he's watching.
Yeah, I hope so. That's something we did speak about as well. The amendment that'll hopefully be on that ballot to restore the voting rights. We also talked about with the legality of cannabis coming to fruition in so many states. Do you support basically it going retroactive and taking those crimes off of people's records then?
100%. I think first off, the benefits of legalizing cannabis, not just for medical reasons, economic reasons, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Right now we incarcerate more people in this country than any other country on the planet. And a number of these folks, who are in there for a nonviolent drug possession for cannabis, we've got to retroactively make sure that if they're in prison for that, let's release them, because it's just the right. It's not just the economic. It's not an economic benefit. It's the right thing to do. These folks that have been in prison, let's focus on making sure that they get out. And I completely support legalization of cannabis.
Awesome. You also talk about a lot about a Green New Deal, which we are huge proponents of at Real Progressive. You're obviously surrounded by water in Florida, and you talk a lot about the fish there. Can you discuss the importance of what you're trying to accomplish in that regard?
Sure. So in my district is an estuary called the Indian River Lagoon, and it's one of the most biodiverse estuaries in the world. And over the course of decades of overdevelopment, overpollution, this body of water, now we have the recurrence of what's called fish kills. So in 2016, we lost billions of tons of fish. And we're seeing that pattern emerge again. And so there's a number of factors that come into play. So we're seeing pollution. So we're seeing fertilizers from lawns that get dumped into from storm runoff into the lagoon. We're seeing overdevelopment. We're seeing sugar water from Lake Okeechobee builds up this toxic algae that makes its way up into our waterways. We're seeing septic tanks leaking into. So there's a number of factors that have contributed to this body of water being really polluted, and it's resulting in a number of fish kills, as well as human illnesses. Some of this water you don't want to be around. And so several decades of these circumstances have resulted in this. So in 2016, our Brevard County passed a resolution, a 1/2-cent sales tax, to get the funding we need to actually clean up the lagoon. And so we're getting that. Those projects are underway, and it's really important. At the end of the day, I live on a coastal district. We're seeing the impact of not only climate change, but also what's happening in our lagoon, right, with the rivers. And some of it comes down to, right now, Lake Okeechobee, which is this big body of water, it diverts, it's full of these toxic pollutants. And that water, when the levels get too high, gets discharged both east and west. And that water finds its way to our bodies of water, to our rivers, and it pollutes it. And so what should be happening is that lake water should be flowing south to the Everglades. So it's got a way to filter itself before it gets there. The reason that's not happening is the sugar industry. They've bought out a lot of these politicians. And so instead of sending that water south, it gets diverted. And so that's just one aspect of it, right? But when we're looking at, before 2050, we're looking at about 2 feet in estimated sea level rise. Living on a coast, 2 feet of sea level rise, you don't have a coastline anymore. And so one of the things we've got to do is really protect our planet. And I think the best way we can do that is a Green New Deal. Let's rebuild all the crumbling infrastructure we've got in this country and do it with renewable and sustainable energy. Not only is that economically a great thing to do, it'll put millions of people to work. It protects the planet. It's a win-win for all. And so I'm definitely a big proponent of a Green New Deal.
Absolutely. I went to Venice, Italy, like 2 years ago, and that scared the living crap out of me. I was just like, these people they don't leave their home. They take baskets and put it out the window to
Right.
get their bread delivered to them and stuff. And I mean, the water is like an inch from their door.
Right.
It's just incredible. Along with the Green New Deal, do you support a federal job guarantee?
I definitely do. I think that that's one way. Right now, folks are really struggling. The minimum wage here in Florida is $8.25 an hour. So if you average that out, you're near poverty levels. And so I'm meeting teachers right now who are working second and third jobs just to make ends meet. And so there's a lot of folks who don't have work. Not only are they not getting paid enough, they're not in jobs that really fulfill them. I'm seeing a lot of people take jobs where it's merely for the benefit, right? And so you're seeing a whole movement of a whole generation of kids who are coming out of college, not necessarily taking on jobs that would fulfill them or be better for the planet. It's, well, I can get health benefits from this job, so I'm going to do this job, even though it's not something that person would want to do, or it's detrimental to the planet. So I think we've got to really just restructure the way our society operates. And it's like, okay, at the end of the day, how do we get people who are fulfilled, who are doing work that fulfills them, and make sure that they're productive members of society, doing things that not only protect the planet, but build this sense of community. And I think that a federal jobs guarantee would get us one step there for sure.
Absolutely. You just made a lot of people happy in the comments. Our viewers are like super onto like Green New Deal and federal job guarantee. And you also talk about free college tuition and for trade school as well. Yeah. Why is that on your platform? Why was that important to you?
Sure. So right now in Florida, we've got about $80 billion in student debt. Just one of the colleges here in my district, Eastern Florida State College, has a student loan default rate of nearly 20%. I'm meeting so many young folks who are at that age. So when I went to university, I went to UCLA, got my degree in economics. I'm meeting a number of young folks. So when they're at their senior year and deciding whether or not to go to college, they're making that decision on the basis of, one, can they afford going to college? And two, can they get a job that can pay, the student loans that they're going to be taking on? Since the 70s, college expenses have gone up astronomically. It's over 1,000%. And so we're seeing a whole generation of kids who are choosing not to pursue a degree or even a trade because they don't see that option being something that they can do. And so you see a lot of these kids choosing jobs, choosing careers that may not necessarily be the best for them. And it's on the basis of money, right? And so we're losing a whole generation of talent, of folks who could be in, for me, at the end of the day, there's a great quote by President FDR. He once said, for democracy to succeed, those who express choice must be prepared to choose wisely. So the best safeguard to our democracy is education. And I fundamentally believe that we've got to make sure that our citizens, not just in this district, but across the country, that we're well educated. And I think that one of the best investments we can make in this country is to invest in our young folks, in education, make sure that they've got the opportunity, that if they do choose to go to college or pursue a trade, let's make sure that they have got that option. And so I'm a firm believer. For me, education was my liberation from poverty. And so I think that still should hold true for everyone here today.
Well, I was an English major, so I work in healthcare because, I was an English major. But yes, I actually worked for a student loans company in Pennsylvania for 3 years. And man, did it break my heart having to take those phone calls from these kids and these parents of the kids Like, I have 200,000 in debt.
Right.
I can't get a job. What, it's incredible. I have some comments from my teammates. Since you went to school for economics, are you familiar with MMT?
I haven't heard that term yet.
Modern monetary theory.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't heard that one yet.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Basically, it's the federal taxes don't fund spending. So when the government says we don't have enough to pay for this and such, it's basically lies, because we do have enough.
Sure.
We create our own money, so we have enough to basically do anything we want and need to do. So that's on a federal level. So they were just wanting to know if you heard of that.
Oh, yeah. So I hadn't heard the term MMT, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And absolutely, I feel at the end of the day, when we look at these things that, let's take, for example, the tax rate that just got passed. This is the GOP tax rate of $2 trillion, so the wealthiest corporations and billionaires on the planet. So no one seems to question how are we going to pay for that. But as soon as we talk about let's get Medicare for all, or let's make sure that we've got tuition-free public education or trade school for kids, it's like, how are we going to pay for that? And so it's a weird thing. Let's talk about defense. We'll increase that budget by almost $1 trillion. No one questions how are you going to pay for that? But as soon as these services that actually benefit the majority of Americans come into play, that question is the first thing that arises. We can absolutely pay for all of the services, all of the proposals that I've talked about tonight. We can absolutely pay for all of that. It's just a matter of saying, look, what are our priorities as a nation? If we want to say, look, our environment is important to us, education is important to our children, healthcare is a human right. If we believe these values, we can absolutely not only prepare a budget to tackle all of that and pay for it, we can probably do it and start working on reducing the deficit at the same time. Because at the end of the day, right now, all of this thing that gets skewed towards, they said this $2 trillion tax rate, companies will reinvest, they'll pay their workers more. What we're seeing right now are stock buybacks and dividends, right? So at the end of the day, let's figure out what are our priorities as a nation, and we can get the money to pay for all that. It's already there. It's just a matter of let's make sure that the budget reflects our values.
Right, absolutely. As far as healthcare, which you've kind of touched on a few times, what makes you passionate about Medicare for all? Why, especially for your district? Why put that on your platform?
Sure. So I lost my brother to lung cancer when he was 40 years old. This was 5 years ago. And so when he had that illness, I watched him struggle. So when he got the cancer diagnosis, he had gotten 6 months. He actually lived over 2 years. I mean, he was a fighter. And I saw him go through not only the struggle of trying to stay alive, but going through the process of how our medical system works today. And it's brutal. It's really, really challenging. And my brother was lucky. He had health insurance. But in my district, I've got over 91,000 people don't have any kind of coverage. In Florida, it's 2.6 million Floridians don't have any kind of health insurance. And many more, if you think about it, if they do have health insurance, they can't afford the co-pays or the deductibles, the premiums. And so they don't end up getting any kind of treatment either. This is, I've made my way around the district. So when I set off to build my platform, it wasn't me just pushing what I wanted to see. I held listening events, little town halls to really get what are the most pressing issues, concerns of the residents of my district. And healthcare, inevitably, in every listening session I did, was the number one or number two issue, and it kept coming up. And it's heartbreaking, the stories you hear. I'm meeting folks who are going through divorce because one of the spouses has an illness, they don't have insurance, and they want to use collateral from the other person, their business, which is their sole source of income, to pay for the treatment. I've met folks who have lost their entire savings, their homes, their life savings, and they're bankrupt. And it's to pay for medical care. I don't think that's right. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Healthcare should be a human right. And I believe that, we've got to make sure that people are taken care of. And so for me, I'm really passionate about it. I want to make sure that folks get the care that they need. And most other developed countries are already doing this. We're not reinventing the wheel here. And I think that it's just a matter of having the political courage and the will to say, enough is enough. Healthcare should be a human right, and let's do something about it. So.
Absolutely. I made a post yesterday. Some of my viewers know I was in the hospital yesterday. I had an emergency, just like excruciating pain. And I went to the ER, and it was like pain I've never felt in my life. But I didn't drop a single tear until I told my husband, I am so sorry. I don't want these medical bills. I kept fighting him. No, I'm not going to go. I'll just deal with it for like 45 minutes. And he's like, we have to go. And I have insurance, but I have a deductible out the wazoo and shit like that. And it's like, I work full time. I'm a lot better than many people, but it's just like, I'm terrified to get those bills. Right. Because I know they're coming. I know they are. And now they're telling me I probably have to have my gallbladder taken out.
No. I'm so sorry.
I don't even want to know how much that's going to be. Right. And it's like when you're sick, you don't really want stress.
Exactly.
That's not a good route.
No. And, the thing is, we pay for it on one end or the other, right? And so do we want to make sure folks get the preventative care, the wellness care that they need before they get sick? Or do we want to pay for that ambulance visit with the heart attack because they haven't had health care for, so long? And so I think it's just a matter of, we need to decide, look, healthcare should be a human right, and let's make that happen. I think we can. There's the caucus that just developed. That's exciting as well. The Medicare for All caucus up in Congress. So yes. I think we'll see this in our lifetimes. I'm going to be pushing for it as soon as I get in there.
So. We only need one state. You know what I mean? Once we have one state, and oh my gosh, that would change our country. Absolutely change our country.
Absolutely.
You talk about social justice reform. Today I watched a film, Survivor's Guide to Prison.
Okay.
And it really just struck me. It was so intense. What specifically are you passionate about as far as social justice reform goes?
Sure. So in our state, there was a study that was done called Bias on the Bench by the Herald Tribune, the Sarasota Herald Tribune. And it found that people of color, for the same offense, so if you have a white person and a black person commit the same crime, that depending on the offense, in some cases, the black person would get more than double the sentencing. And so social justice for me, when we look at these differences in terms of sentencing, in terms of the type of economic, educational opportunities, it's in every part of our society. And so for me, it's about, how do we make our society more equal and just? The fact that women still don't have equal pay for equal work, and it's even worse for women of color. So take your pick. It's on every aspect. We look at our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. They're under a constant attack. I mean, they want to pass. We had bathroom laws that they wanted to pass a couple of years ago, and even at our school board, this was in 2016. They wanted to. They weren't ready to put in language that protected children based on gender identity and expression. So, I think it hits every, whether it be a person of color, whether it be your gender, whether it be socioeconomic. I mean, if you just look at the straight numbers, poor people don't have the same, routes of opportunity. The fact that we're number 3 in the country in terms of the number of folks who pay more than half their income on rent. So it's about income inequality. It's about racial disparity. There's just so much to take on. At the end of the day, the way I look at it is we're all in kind of the same boat, right? If I look at my friends of color or women or my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, we're all being oppressed or attacked in some way or another. And the way we win is to say, look, all of these issues we're talking about are intersectional. And so it can't just be about, let's, further one cause here. It's about how do we bond together and say, look, at the end of the day, we've got a common enemy and we've got to unite, and that's how we win. And at the end of the day, these policies that we're pushing for will help all of us together. And so social justice is huge for me. And I think it's absolutely doable. It's about saying, hey, you know what? They're trying to pit us against each other, and we can't let that happen. We've got to unite and stick by one another, and that's how we win.
Absolutely. Kind of on that kind of inspirational note, I've been seeing and I'm guilty as well, a lot of defeatism this week. With Abdul, a lot of us are very heartbroken. Yeah. We had some wins, but I mean, my God, it's heartbreaking. Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of people say, screw it, I'm not voting anymore. What's it matter? I give up. I'm throwing in the towel. What do you say to people like that you definitely, I'm sure, run into them when you canvass as well. Well, my vote won't count anyway. Right. What do you say to those people to encourage them to say, yeah, actually, it is still worth it?
So I run into that all the time. And what I tell them, and it's a matter of, we have families, we have babies in cages. We have children that have been separated from their families we still have families that are separated. The parents don't know where their children are. We have a lagoon where we've got, I don't know if you saw this video making the rounds, but there was a manatee, a mother manatee that was died, and its infant was still trying to nurse on the mother. When we think about, what's at stake here, it's really important that folks realize, look, the state of our community, the state of our country, the soul of our country is at stake here. And it's a matter of, look, we're not going to win everything, but it's the long game. It took us decades to get to the point we're at today. And so to hope that this flips overnight, I wish we could, but it's going to take committed resources, committed work, committed hustle to say, look, we want to see a better world. And damn it, we have to work to get there. And some of these losses, as painful as they are, it's, we brush it off our shoulders and we get to work the next day, the next minute. Because if we don't, when I look at 2018, what we're facing with another 2 years of this current administration, with what they're doing on their attack on minorities, the attack on the environment, the attack on everything, we literally, this is the ultimate fight. We have to protect the soul of our country. And, for me, that's the rallying cry. We've got to do this, not just for us, but for future generations. And to say to the future generations, to the kids, look, we did everything we could to make sure that this planet is still here. This country is still here for you. And so at the end of the day, that's the motivating factor is it's not just about protecting it for the now, it's about protecting this for the future. And we've got to just really, really fight for that.
Absolutely. I mean, if we can't get our shit together now, I don't know. I mean, my God, it's just, oh my gosh. It's, do you ever have the fear? Because I know myself and my friends, my allies do. Do you ever have the fear that the way the Democratic Party is behaving and everything, that we will have Trump 2020?
So that's a definite, reality where it's, look, if we don't put our stake in the ground and say, look, we're not We're not going to be beholden to the same interests that are powering the other side, that are powering those decisions. We've got to make sure that we get candidates who are willing to say, who have the courage, the political will to say, look, this is the right thing to do, and stand by that. So I am worried. You know, when I saw that article today about the DNC possibly taking fossil fuel money again, you know, we can't take steps backward. And, you know, if the party decides to go that front, it just makes our work that much harder. And so that's the way I look at it is, look, at the end of the day, even if they decided to do that, it's not, I'm not going to throw my hands up in the air and say, okay, this is done. It just makes our work that much harder. And I hope that, you know, if we get enough candidates, if we get enough good folks elected and enough folks to get involved in the party, I think that we can overcome, I think that's what we're facing. We're facing a lot of folks who have not been involved in the political process. We're seeing a lot more engagement today, but it's nearly not enough. I mean, if you look at the number of folks who vote in these primaries or who are involved as precinct committee men and women, not just in my, you know, state, but across the country, we still have a number more people who don't vote, who don't get involved in the process. We're seeing our whole society being dictated by the handful of folks who are doing it. And so it's a matter of how do we rally everyone else to say, look, we're the only ones who can actually do what needs to be done in this country and get involved. And so it's about just keep hustling. The end game, we know what's in sight, and doing the work. And we have hope, right? When we see what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did in New York, that's incredible. And I think she's gonna be a progressive champion for us there. And it's hopefully we can get some allies up there this November. I'm hoping to join her up there.
Damn socialists. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't help it. But yeah, I mean, I've had Alex on and you know, we definitely had some other wins. I haven't been able to check on Sarah Smith today. I know we were kicking ass yesterday. So I got to check on her yet. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we have Welder, Thompson. We've got some good people in there. So it's hard not to get discouraged, but we absolutely have to keep fighting. Exactly. I am annoying the hell out of people because every day I'm like, you know what? There's 20 more primaries. Stop talking about 2020. And I get so frustrated because I'm like, we have a general and more primaries. We need to focus on 2018.
Exactly.
Now.
Exactly.
And it's like, we're not going to have President Bernie in 2020 unless we can get people like you guys in there now. That's the only way we're going to have a progressive president. So yeah, we definitely gotta keep moving now. Right. If you want to leave our viewers with something to, you know, have them recommend you to people in Florida or throw you a few dollars or anything like that, what do you want to leave them with?
Yeah, thank you so much. So honestly, right now, the way we win this race is by talking to folks, by having volunteers knock on doors, phone banks. So one of the best ways to get involved in the campaign is votesanjaypatel.com. That's my website. So there's a donate page there. If you've got, you know, this is a grassroots effort. Everything that we're doing, this is all grassroots. So every little bit helps to get us to the push. I'm running against a 5-term incumbent who's hoarded a stockpile of cash. So I'm running against that funding. But, you know, we're doing we actually out fundraised him in the second quarter by 50%, and my money's individual contributions. And so it's a matter of, you know, we could definitely do this. So votesanjaypatel.com/donate/join to become a volunteer. And, you know, honestly, some of the little things on Facebook, I'm at facebook.com/votesanjaypatel. I would love a like. You know, these get my message out as well. And then on Twitter and Instagram, I'm Vote Sanjay Patel as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, same with the show. Every single time you share one of these candidates I have, other people share it, other people see it. They send it to people in that state. Exposure for progressive candidates is everything. We are the media. We learned that. in 2016. We are the media.
Right.
Also, the official voting date is in Florida is the 28th of August. However, they do start sending mail-in ballots. Is that correct?
Yes. And so I'm actually not on the primary, so I'm going straight to November 6th. But yes, right now we've got mail ballots, early voting will be happening shortly next week. Next week we'll start that, but right now they're counting mail ballots. And so we'll see the outcome on August 28th.
Even though you guys, he's not going to have a primary, it's very important when your friends who are saying, oh, we have this, you know, this incumbent Republican and he's, you know, this and that, say, well, there's actually a guy who's progressive who's running against him. So it's a good time to still promote. But thank you so much, Sanjay, for coming on. You are freaking awesome. I'm so glad you decided to join us. We wish you the best of luck. You're awesome.
Likewise. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for watching. Monday, I will be having the Lieutenant Governor of Vermont, David Zuckerman. He's joining me, so that's kind of cool. And Wednesday, I am welcoming Tim Canova back. So he'll be joining me again. So pretty good shows coming up. I'm pretty fortunate. So again, thank you guys for watching, and thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you again. Have a great night.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.